Today's guest's new autobiography details his difficult childhood, his becoming an All-American at Georgetown and a perennial All-Star for Charlotte and Miami, his extraordinary charity work, and his winning an NBA title with the Heat in 2005, only a few years after receiving a kidney transplant. It makes perfect sense that his new book is titled Resilience, and it's my pleasure to welcome a man you have to respect, Alonzo Mourning. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, Tim. Thank you.
If there were ever a perfect name and word for a book, it's Resilience, after some of the things you've gone through in your life. The top of the world,
right,
and from a health standpoint, the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, well, I think that it's a powerful word, and it fits. You know, it really kind of embodies the memoirs of my life. You know, and I think that you know, it's what we're trying to promote. You know, through the book. You know, we're trying, all of the readers out there, we're trying to promote overcoming and not succumbing, never giving up. You know, continually pushing through, you know, not letting it get you down, you know, those type of things, you know. And when I pick up a book and I read a book, you know, I want it to make me better, you know, after I finish reading it, you know, I want it to help me look at life from a different perspective so that I'll take steps forward from the words that I read, you know, and I hope that that my life on paper, you know, will do that for all of the readers. Resilience,
a word with which you were not familiar when you were 12 years old, when your parents divorced, certainly a rocky start.
It was a difficult time for me, and I had to unfortunately make some decisions that, you know, I wasn't too comfortable with, you know, and I was at a point in my life where I made a decision where I didn't want to live without a parent. You know, I didn't want to take any sides, you know, and the judge
You weren't angry, right?
No, I wasn't angry at all. You know, I was a little disappointed, you know, that and not really understanding why they couldn't stay together, and just due to the overall situation. That was a lot for 11, 12-year-old kid to digest.
Sure.
You know,
sure.
So, and I love both my parents dearly, you know, and I just didn't want to take sides. I want to either live with my mom or live with my dad, you know. So, you know, I elected to spend the rest of my time in the foster care system, and the
judge agreed with that.
Agreed with that, yeah, you know, and I mean they did whatever the child wanted at that particular time, and I think they still do, you know. And I just wasn't comfortable in being able to choose which parent I wanted to live with, and I just wasn't comfortable at that particular stage.
Well, fortunately for you, a woman entered your life who has got to be one of the more incredible women that I've ever heard about, read about. She's almost like an American Mother Teresa.
Yes, she is.
And her name is Fanny Threet.
Yes.
Talk about Fanny, if you would.
Well, like you said, she's angelic. You know, she's God sent to me, and she fostered 49 kids throughout, you know, her life, and I was one of the 49 children. And she, when I was in the foster care, so I stayed in a group home for quite some time, and I visited several homes. You know, when you're in the group home, you know, they send you through a process where you visit different families, you know, and you decide or whether you feel comfortable with spending the rest of your life with that particular family, you know. And when I was introduced to the Threet family, you know, I just felt that love and that, you know, that comfort and what a child is looking for at that particular time in your life, you know. And I didn't want to leave.
And the sense of scholarship too. I mean, she really impressed upon you the fact that you got to study and you've got to learn.
Well, I mean, she's a retired school teacher, so that was one of the things that she constantly promoted in the household. She had 2 children of her own, both who went off to college in the military, and she knew that the key to success obviously was, first of all, instilling an educational foundation in your life, you know, so that was first and foremost. And then also, I mean, she stressed the importance of having a strong faith and believing in a higher being, in God, and that is how it all started coming together for me and helping me understand, what the things that I needed to embody in my life, and she played an intricate role in my development as a young man.
She's a remarkable woman. Her name, once again, is Fanny Threet, and we're going to talk about Fanny and Alonzo going to Georgetown and then ultimately to the pros right after this. I'm back with Alonzo Mourning, whose new autobiography is titled Resilience, Faith, Focus, and Triumph. We were talking about Fanny Threet, your foster mom, and how she encouraged scholarship in your family. And to go to Georgetown, I mean, you took a lot of pride in your studies.
Yes, I did take a lot of pride.
Great school.
Yeah, it's an amazing school, but, it's just the coach alone was what moved me, obviously, to go to that school.
Did John Thompson come and talk to you? At that time, you were, you were 16, 17 years old, probably 6'7", 6'8"?
Yeah, no, I was close to 6'9", 6'10" at 17 years old, But, what moved me to go to Georgetown was like all the other coaches visited my home, Bobby Crimmins, Terry Holland, Virginia, all the Bob Wade, Maryland, all those coaches came and visited my home, and Miss Threet was moved by John Thompson because John told her that, look, I'm not going to promise him anything. And he was so different from all the other coaches. He said, I'm not going to promise him anything, but I do know that he's going to get an education. I'm not going to promise you that he's going to start, that he's going to get this or that, all of these accolades. He's got to work for that, but I do know that he's going to go to class and he's going to get his education. So that pretty much put Miss Threet over the top and said, hey, you're going to Georgetown. So, and
one of the keys to your success was defense, and John Thompson really preached that, didn't he?
Very much so. I knew that, by Bill Lassiter planting that seed in high school as a high school coach and planting that seed of defense and helped me understand the importance of it, which in turn, I knew how defense would just totally change the game. I put all my focus into that. So when I got to Georgetown, Big John just solidified it, and stressed it even more, So I hung my hat on that. When I stepped out on the court, I knew that, okay, if I wasn't going to score the basketball, I knew I could change the game by making a statement, by stopping the opponent from scoring as well.
You have even made, to fast forward to this year, this past finals, talking about the Lakers and how poor their defense was against the Celtics. And that's really the reason they lost.
That is the reason they lost, and it kind of, so for somebody that takes a lot of pride in that particular component of the game, I looked at the Lakers and I was really upset and disappointed watching because once you get to that particular level, that stage, the pinnacle of your sport, and playing for a world title, then you leave no stone unturned. And there's no guarantee you're going to get back there again, so therefore you place emphasis on all the things that are most important to the success of you, of winning and all. And that obviously they ignored defense, which in turn they were exposed. Boston exposed that particular deficit in their game.
Fascinating story with Alonzo Mourning. We'll be back with Alonzo right after this. My guest, Alonzo Mourning, has always been such a formidable presence on the basketball court, particularly on defense, as we talked about, but it hasn't always been easy for you. Kind of fast forward over the last 8 years, you win a gold in Sydney in 2000, and then you come down with a very, very serious kidney ailment. Yeah. Tell us how that started. Was it genetic? Is it genetic?
Yeah, well, I was diagnosed with a rare genetic kidney disorder called focal glomerulosclerosis. I'm not going to try to get you to say that.
Or spell it.
But it was very difficult for me to digest because I had just come off an amazing year. great basketball season. You know, first team All NBA, All Star in 2000, and very successful year, and gold medal in the Olympics. And then when I came back to do my preseason physical to get ready for the 2001 season, I noticed some abnormalities in my body chemistries, you know, and they compared it to my previous years, my previous labs. The initial diagnosis was focal sclerosis, and the doctor told me, look, you know, you'll need a transplant within 9 to 12 months, and you'll probably be on dialysis, maybe even a little sooner than that, you know.
Which meant you had to find a match, right?
Yeah, I had to find a match. I would need to probably get a transplant soon, but I did a lot of research, and I found Dr. Jerry Appel, who was considered the best in the business when it came to kidney research. And he's based at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital here in New York. And reached out to him. He said, look, you know, let's try to combat this from a lot of different angles. You know, we can probably put this in remission, which he did. So we went through
medication?
Extensive therapy, oral therapy, medications and things of that nature. And it kind of held the process up, really. You know, I didn't really need a transplant until 2003. And I was never on dialysis, thank God, you know, which has an amazing effect on you, you know, a very hard effect on your body when you have to go on dialysis, you know. But I was fortunate enough in that aspect. And I have a big family, so I had a lot of different options when it came to candidates for a possible donor. I found
Jason Cooper, your cousin.
Yes, I
right?
found my second cousin who I hadn't seen in over 20 some odd years, and it's amazing how he came into the picture, you know, because the last time I had seen him was at a family reunion when we were much younger, and spending time at my grandmother's house and my great-grandmother's house in Ahoskie, North Carolina. And my grandmother, my father's mom, was passing at the time. She was battling cancer. And she was in Virginia, and Jason drove up to see his aunt. And he was in the hospital with my father at my grandmother's bedside, and news flashed across the screen and on the TV in my grandmother's room, hospital room, and it said Alonzo Mourning has to retire from basketball. He's going to need a kidney transplant, so on and so forth. So my father looked at Jason and said, Jason, my son, he's going to have to retire from basketball, you know. And he said, well, look, you know, he doesn't know I live in New York, but tell him that if he needs me, give me a call. So I reached out to Jason, and
having no idea whether there would be a fit at the time.
At the time, you know. So we had my uncles. My mom has 5 sisters and 5 brothers, you know. So I have a lot of cousins as well. So we had several of my family members come in, and Jason was one of them. And Jason ended up being the match. So it's an amazing story, you know, how my grandmother, shortly after that, my grandmother passed. So it's amazing how my grandmother's death brought me life. You know, so that's why I don't believe in coincidences at all. I know God brought Jason into my life, and there's a reason why I'm sitting here today. And it's, you know, I think my purpose here is not just about basketball. You know, it's about changing other people's lives in so many other type of ways. You know, I don't want to be remembered by how many rebounds or block shots that I've gotten. You know, I think that I have a lot more work to do besides what I've done on the court.
When you talk about coincidences in basketball, I'm sure Pat Riley does not consider it a coincidence that you finally won a world title with the Miami Heat. That was a couple of years ago, and I'll be back and we'll talk about that with Alonzo Mourning right after this.
Celebration has begun for the Miami Heat. They win their first NBA championship. Do it in 6 games. We'll be back.
Oh, that was in 2006, and a moment you'll never forget. Finally got the ring.
Yeah, that's a moment that you want to savor for the rest of your life. And anytime I see that clip or, you know, see footage of that, you know, I mean, it just rekindles all of it, just the you know, just the amazing feelings that you had at that particular time, because you think about all the things in your life that you had to go through, to get to that particular point. And I can remember Pat Riley telling us that the hardest thing you ever do in your life at this profession is winning a world championship, you know. And he was truly right. That was difficult, just getting to that particular point.
How difficult was it? I mean, you lose your first 2 games at home and then come back and become one of only 2 teams to win the championship after losing your first two games at home.
We looked at that particular time during the NBA Finals as our time. For us to come back and win 3 games in a row and be in that position to just win it all, we looked at that as our Game 7, and we won it in 4 games in a row in that Game 6.
We have seen Mark Cuban so many times, and his histrionics on the sidelines, a couple of rows up with of course, the owner of the Dallas Mavericks. Was he different after the Mavericks had won 2 games in a row, or did the players ever interact with Cuban?
Well, actually, I think Mark Cuban's antics motivated us, to tell you the truth, because they won the first 2 games, and he went on the David Letterman show. And he told David Letterman that, hey, we got this parade set up already, and we posted that in the locker room. And that was true motivation, because we knew that they had to come back and play 3 games on our home court after those 2 games. And we had been playing extremely well. We only lost 1 game throughout the playoffs on our home court, and that was against the Nets during the playoffs, and we used that as motivation, So if he would have kept his mouth shut, they might have won, but he just added fuel to the fire, that's all.
In Alonzo Mourning's new book, Resilience, he quotes Muhammad Ali. Muhammad said, "Service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth." It's just a terrific quote. And speaking of service to others, I mean, you're thinking about serving another NBA team at the age of 38 after knee surgery. Are you going to play this year?
Well, that's my intentions. I really want to finish my career off where I'm able to walk off the court,
on your terms.
On my own terms, my last memory of being on an NBA court was being helped and carried off, based on this knee injury. And that was back in December the 20th. And it's so ironic that the injury happened on the anniversary of my kidney transplant on December the 19th. On that night in Atlanta is when the injury happened, So this is an injury where it takes about a year to recover. I'm about a month ahead of schedule. So I'm going to make a decision sometime in December whether or not I'll be able to play any further,
Realizing how much work is involved.
Well, it's a lot of work involved, because you got to get these muscles firing. Again, you got to build the quad muscles back up to a level where it can endure the rigors of the sport. And I had a talk with Bill Russell, and I said, well, what would you do if you was in my position? He said, you know what? He said that you know when it's time to retire when you got to think about your actions on the court, because you base a lot of your actions on the court off of instinct.
Sure.
So when you got to think about doing something, so when you got to think about going to block that shot or going to get that rebound instead of just going to do it and your body just naturally doing it. But when you got to start thinking about it, then it's time for you to stop, because you don't want to put yourself in a position where you injure yourself to where you won't be able to enjoy the rest of your life and enjoy your grandkids and things of that nature, So I'm going to take his advice to heart, and I'll know when it's time for me to give it up. But right now, I still have aspirations to want to play again. If I'm able to come back in maybe December, January, maybe even February after the All-Star break, if I'm able to do that, then so be it. I want to do that. I still have a love for the game.
You have had a remarkable career, a remarkable life, and I'm fascinated by it, and I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you being on the show.
Well, thank you so much, Tim.
And I wish you well with your book, Resilience.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Alonzo,
thanks for having me.
Alonzo Mourning's been my guest. I'm Tim McCarver. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Roberto Clemente Award presented by Chevy. Recognized